Max would call that guy or girl an idiot.
Why'd you have to make everything so complicated?
There were some surprised faces in the press conference.
Bienvenido a Mexico. It's the Mexican Grand Prix already as a double header in the Americas continues. We've got Tim Kraaij not on the ground this time to talk us through what's going to be going on in Mexico after that busy US Grand Prix. I'm Jim Kimberley and this is F1 Paddock Update by GP Blog. And we're going to be starting with something that did actually happen, where you were, Tim, maybe you did it, maybe you were involved with this, what's been dubbed Tapegate. This is Red Bull and McLaren doing championship battles of old in a way, where there's interference at a minute level of moving tape around. Firstly, if people don't know what's happened here, can you tell them? And secondly, what's the reaction been now we're going into this Mexican Grand Prix?
Yeah, so maybe first good to clear up that I couldn't do it because I need to leave the grid a little bit earlier than the mechanics can do.
That's what somebody guilty would say, though, Tim. You know?
Yeah, I sneak my way in. You've seen with some journalists if they stay a little bit too long on the grid, what happens to them with all the security guards?
Perfect crime.
I'm not risking that. No. So what did happen on Sunday before the race is that Lando Norris, maybe we start with that. Lando Norris has some issues with finding his place on the starting grid and finding his box on the start grid. And that has been the case over multiple occasions this season, where he even had one penalty in one race. I can't remember which one it was, but he had one penalty when he crossed the line of his pit box. And what McLaren now did is try to give him a reference of where he needs to stop his car on the grid. So what McLaren did is putting some tape to give a reference to Lando Norris where he had to stop his car, because and a lot of drivers say this as well today during the media day in Mexico, that it's very difficult with these cars to get your references on where to stop your car in a grid slot. So they use tape to help Lando find the best place of a grid slot. Red Bull found out. It seemed, because in the last few races they've been on the grid, and of course at a certain point of time the mechanics need to leave the grid as well. And what Red Bull has done is they went to the Lando Norris grid slot, removed the tape and walked off the grid just in time to be on time back off the grid. But on Sunday in Austin, they were too late. So a mechanic was too late off the grid. He went against the procedures of the FIA. So the Red Bull were summoned. They had to go to the FIA stewards. So Red Bull had to pay a 25k suspended fine for being too late still on the grid. So that was the situation. But now in Austin, there's a lot of talk. And of course, online, we've seen a lot of talk about it as well on why Lando Norris needs to use this anyway. Why does he need that tape? Because a lot of drivers don't use it. And I think Carlos Sainz maybe said it best. Of course, no driver says, oh, Lando Norris shouldn't use that. But Carlos, who has been, or maybe still is, a good friend of Lando Norris, they had their bromance at McLaren, of course. He said, yeah, if I knew another competitor would do that, I know what I would do, or at least I know what my team should do. So yeah, really pointing out that Red Bull is in the right to do this, because yeah, we are in a championship fight now, and maybe this shows as well that Red Bull take this serious, that they really want to fight for every point that they can win, and they hope to remove a little bit of an advantage that Lando has with that tape, to get that away from the grid. So I think this shows that the title fight is really on. It feels a little bit similar to 2021. Where these type of things happened a lot, with the big example of the touching of the rear wing of the Mercedes in Brazil, of course, in 2021. But a lot of those examples we had that season, and it feels a little bit like that. Red Bull really trying to find an inch on how they can maybe frustrate McLaren in a way.
Is it the sort of thing now that the Paddock's reacted to, that it's going to be front and center of the spotlight, do we think, in Mexico? Like, I'm expecting the TV cameras of broadcasters to be looking for this tape all of a sudden. And just to clarify as well, that it's actually not Red Bull doing anything wrong with the tape, because it would be ridiculous for the FIA to have a ruling about this. It was actually about them being late. It wasn't actually about them trying to move a bit of tape, right?
Yeah, correct. They can do what they want on the grid, of course. And if they want to remove the tape, they can remove the tape. And if they're later off the grid than McLaren, they can do so. And yeah, if they remove it and McLaren is already gone from the grid, yeah, it is possible. But it was now a problem because they were, or at least one Red Bull mechanic was too late with getting off the grid. So that was the problem in this instance. But they can keep on doing it. The issue is what McLaren now will do reacting to this because they want that tape on the grid. But I think the interesting thing is that, yeah, Red Bull have been able to find a weak spot in Lando and McLaren their game because, yeah, it's like the grid is quite tight when all the VIPs and the media are there on the grid, or at least certain media and certain VIPs are on the grid. Then it's quite busy. But when those people are removed, it's only the mechanics, and those are like small groups of people. So you tend to see everything that's happening on that grid. So yeah, the fact that Red Bull was able to spot it and now, yeah, have been able to remove it at certain Grand Prix weekends. Yeah, it's quite clever. And yeah, like I said, I think the science thing explains it best. It's showing a weakness in Lando's game where Red Bull now tried to benefit from. And that's where we've come now in the championship fight, that those small marginal gains can be difference in the championship fight at the end.
There's fine margins. I say it quite a lot in commentary, but Formula One is so much about fine margins. And it looks like this could have been bad for Lando, this Tapegate, as the media are dubbing it now. But the bad thing for Lando are going to be some repercussions from McLaren after that Singapore Turn 1 incident. Red Bull dishing out the punishment, it turns out, by removing a bit of tape. But it sounds like this repercussion has already ended. We don't still understand fully what's going on, but what do you know about what the repercussions were and how they're already over for Lando?
Yeah, there were some surprised faces in the press conference, I have to say, because Oscar Piastri was asked about the situation with Lando Norris and if they reviewed the incident in the sprint race. And there he revealed that that he was more to blame, as the team stated it. So he had to take the blame. And with that blame came the repercussions that we've had in Austin, of course, for Lando Norris, because he had the incident with Piastri in Singapore. And then the repercussions for Lando Norris were that in all the other qualifyings for the rest of the season, Oscar Piastri would have the choice of wanting to go out first or want to go out second. So he had that benefit in Austin. But now with the sprint race happened as it did, McLaren decided that Piastri was to blame. He moved over from he crossed a lane, so McLaren sees it almost as athletics, as running. So you have to stick to your own lane, and Piastri tried to switch lanes. Made that collision happen, where Zach Brown first called Nico Hulkenberg an amateur. He now thinks it still was his own driver. Because Oscar Piastri switched lanes, he now has to get those repercussions. But yeah, they equal out, so there are no repercussions now. Again, it's all equal game. And yeah, when I hear that, I'm like, they're making it so tough, and it's not even fun anymore. It's like, what are you doing? You're talking about F1 like it's athletics. You're trying to make it a fair game, which you never can. There needs to be some emotion in sport as well, and I feel like that with all those rules, I don't even want to be in those debriefings, to be honest. But to be in those debriefings and constantly evaluate every single detail that you've done and make it that equal, I think you you roughen off the edges a little bit of those drivers who naturally have that killer instinct, who have that fighting instinct of wanting to be the quickest, but to try to be all fair and square and even and nicey to each other. Yet that ends up having Max Verstappen in the situation where he is right now, in being able to fight for this championship. And I think, yeah, looking at the overall picture, I think more and more people start to hope for Max Verstappen to become world champion, because yeah, at this point in time, you don't even would like to see McLaren become champion, because they just do so many silly stuff.
You know, there's a scene in Mission Impossible Fallout where Henry Cavill's character speaks to the other bad guy, or the guy his boss, and he just goes, "Why'd you have to make everything so fucking complicated?" And that is exactly what my reaction was as you're going through that. It's so over the top. I know Max Verstappen's already said about the McLaren over complications, but oh boy, it's going to be Zach Brown grasping loss from the jaws of victory. It's so ridiculous at this point. But if that's what McLaren want to do, that's what McLaren are going to do. It's fascinating, but it is making an interesting end to this otherwise tepid championship season, because we are going into these final rounds with Max Verstappen really looming large. The championship could go down to a three-way fight. I think that's what everybody actually wants, and then they can settle it all out in Abu Dhabi. But Max Verstappen is closing in very quickly. What are the Paddock's reaction to Max Verstappen now really firmly joining in this championship fight?
I think a lot of them are surprised in a way. In some ways not, because they all say, yeah, it's Max. But I think that they're still surprised that, especially also Red Bull, have been able to make such a big step in this final season of this final year of the regulations, because a lot of teams have moved a big part of their financial support to and people support as well to 2026. So there's a lot less attention to 2025, and that they've been able to make such a big leap, making that step to McLaren, who seemed invincible at the start of the season, really make this turnaround in this season, being able to overhaul such a big point margin. And yeah, Max himself said in Austin, of course, that if he would be presented this scenario in Zandvoort, that he would call that guy or girl an idiot. But the scenario is now here, and even Oscar today was asked about that statement from Max, and he said, yeah, even we thought that it would be between us. So with all the McLaren talk of, oh no, never rule out Max, oh no, never rule out Red Bull, they're very quick, even they thought it would be between the two of them. So I think everyone thought that, and it's so incredible to see McLaren or Red Bull being able to overturn this and make this championship interesting again with the real fighter that Max is. And I think, we're really up for something, and a lot of people are very curious to see how this develops. And the history in the making was the quote Laura Mackey's had, of course, in Austin on Sunday, and Gabriel Bortoleto aligned with that. He said, that this is already history, doing what Max does now, and no matter if he becomes champion in the end or not.
It's going to be really, really tight by the end. You mentioned a point there, and I don't know if you'll know about this, but that they are switching to 2026 as teams generally do. I know that Laura Mackey's joined and things have turned around. That wouldn't all be from Mecca's of the development, that some of that stuff would predate him with the Christian Horner era. But is this the sort of thing that we're getting these advancements because Red Bull are so capable, or do you think they have sacrificed some 2026 possibilities? Because I know they were really worried about losing Max Verstappen, so I thought they'd been focusing on getting that car ready for next season.
Yeah, look, maybe good to give a little bit of clarification on that is it, like, an F1 team is not easy to move that quickly in another direction. So like I've been to factories before, and especially in the Aston Martin factory, we've got a big tour on how those processes work. And from an idea of what you want to update to the finally being the part on the car takes, depending on how big the part is, 4 to 8 months. So it's not like Mackey's coming in and deciding, okay, I want this update, I want this update, I want this now on the car. that doesn't work. All the updates that have been put on the Red Bull car were already um, in the ideal when Christian Horner was back in charge. So on all the updates, Lauren McKees has no input. He's more on the operational procedures. I think the Red Bull way, and that was shown in 2021 as well, is to fight until the last part of it. And that's why they've been able to come up with so many updates, even in the last part of the season. And I think it's showing something mentally to as well to your driver, like we're fighting until the end for your championship, for our championship, in the hope of getting everything over the line. And I think that is really working for them. And in 2022, it showed that they could do both. So they could do the 2021 development and be on top of the car in 2022 again as well, and create the most dominant car for 2023, of course. So they've shown that they can do it. Will it be the best way forward for 2026? We see that in 2026. But I think that the important thing is that maybe for McLaren, they've maybe been a little bit too arrogant in saying, okay, we stopped the development very early. We're going to be Constructors' Championship anyway. We're going to stop it early, move to 2026 and focus on that car. But the problem is, when you're competitive and when you have a shot at a championship, you need to go for it, because you never know if you're going to be competitive 2026. No matter how many time, no matter how many hours or people or money you spend on the 2026 car, nothing is giving you a guarantee that you will be competitive again as competitive that you are right now. So when you have a shot, you have to take it. And I think in that instance, last year McLaren failed to deliver the driver championship. This year was the 1 year that they could seal it easily if they would updated it a little bit more during the season. And now they've thrown it away by stopping with car development very early, sealing the Constructors' Championship earlier than ever before. But it would be an historic failure if they are not able to deliver the driver championship. If you become Constructor champion in Azerbaijan with 7 or 8 races to go, you don't become driver championship. That's a historic failure of a huge proportion.
I think it was 7 rounds to go. It's absolutely ridiculous if they don't get it at this point. So yeah, fully agree. I have to say, just for, I don't know if you call it parity or whatnot, like Max is still a very long way behind. It's just momentum, and momentum could be a big thing. I know, Tim, that you to go, and I know we've got not on the script here, but the one thing that I've found curious about all this is, I remember Lando Norris crashed in Canada, and he seemed to be more of a complete driver after. He seemed to have the performances and the mentality shift a little bit after getting out of that car, being like, oh, I crashed, I'm sorry. And we remarked on it being unusual at the time, but I do think that actually reignited something in him. I wonder if it's gone the opposite way with Oscar, because it has really started to snowball since that really bad weekend in Baku, and he hasn't got back on top of the car. You can have like an off weekend, maybe 2, but when you're into 3 rounds where you've done pretty poorly, that is where you can get into the head of a driver that you end up slipping. Do you think that's what we're seeing now? And could that cost him the championship just by the mental pressure getting to him?
Yeah, not sure. He was not that bad in Singapore because he had a good qualifying. He outqualified Lando. The only problem was that he left the door open in turn 2.
But his race pace was non-existent as well, though, right?
Yeah, but I think that was combined with the frustration of losing that place and the fact that you're not able to overtake anyway on that circuit. The race pace was not there, but I think that played a part in it. So I think Singapore, he was okay. But I think this is where, if you're talking about the difficulty of Max becoming champion, this is why I still think that he will become champion, because of course Max has to regain 40 points. It's a lot. He needs to win a lot. Only at this point in time, do you see a McLaren driver winning a race? I don't. With the form they have now, the momentum they have now, you don't see them win a race anymore. You either see Leclerc win a race or Russell win a race, but not one of these two guys. on top of that, you have Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Who just switch around who is the best in a weekend. And now it was Lando for a few races, but the next few will be Piastri. That's been all season. It's been back and forth for the whole season. There's no one of the two standing out. So that's why if Max wins every race, you know he's going to win the championship, because Piastri is not going to finish second every race. Lando Norris is going to finish second 3 times. Piastri is going to finish second 3 times, if they even do that. Because you have the third point, if you ask me, is that they also have weekends where they don't perform, like Austin for Piastri, where he finished 5th, but also Lando Norris has had some of those weekends where he performed very poorly. So where they not maximize the performance of the car. So you have those 3 things, like Max having the momentum, the two drivers being too close to each other, why they know one of the two is going to be second every time, and they're not going to outperform or perform to the maximum of the car every weekend, the both of them. So I think the total of that is why I think Max will win it in the end. But it is still very tight, because if Max DNFs one time, it's going to be a very big mountain to climb. So that's the thing hanging over this all. Hopefully Max can close the gap quickly. So we have a very good championship with the 3 of them, because I think that is what everyone needs and deserves, like we've said before. It's going to be an interesting one. And I don't think we've seen the last change so far.
Well, join us on Sunday when it's a McLaren 1-2 and Tim has egg all over his face with Max Verstappen P20 with a lap 1 DNF. I'm actually really interested to see what happens. Max has done so well in Mexico, so I wouldn't be surprised if we do get another Red Bull victory here. Mexico is such an interesting track. It's quite the opposite from mentioned Singapore in overtaking. This is a track where you can overtake on, so I'm very much looking forward to going through everything from the Mexican Grand Prix on Sunday when we'll be back. Thank you, Tim, for everything you brought to us today, and thank you everybody else for watching.